My grandmother took me to see so many movies when I was younger, including Tropic Thunder. So, Grammy, this one is for you. As a huge fan of Downton Abbey, I knew you wanted to see this, took her to see it. She loved it, and as someone who's only seen the original movie, this is better than that original one, and this is pretty damn good. What's going on, buddy? Welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing Downton Abbey, A New Era. The Crawley family goes on a grand journey to the south of France to uncover the mystery of a countess' newly inherited villa, as well as a movie might be actually happening on their grounds. There's many different elements, many different plots going on in here, just like within the show and as well as the movie. And like I mentioned, I've seen a couple episodes now of the actual show, and I really much enjoy it. I need to actually finish the entire thing because my grandmother actually tells me how great the show is. But I did see the original movie, and for that movie, it was quite enjoyable. But I will just flat out come out and say it. This is a better made film as well as a more enjoyable one. Whether for newcomers to the franchise or in general people and veterans who absolutely love the show, just like my grandmother, who said this was a fabulous movie and one of her favorites that she's seen in quite a while. And she sees like everything in theaters. Whether I go with her or whether she just wants to go by herself, she sees everything. And it was really great to see how excited she was getting throughout this, as well as the fans in the press screening. But just starting out, and I'm really much diving into this is just a delightful movie that filled me with whimsy and joy, and I think a lot of Downton Abbey fans are going to have a blast with that. Which, if you are a Downton Abbey fan, or in general never seen Downton Abbey, let me know down below if you guys are excited for this movie. I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts in particular, and in general. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you guys do love talking movies, because that is one of my favorite things to do over here, is talk movies on a daily basis, and that's what I seem to be doing over here. Starting with my pros, one of the things that I always have to give this entire property is the score. The score is absolutely sweeping. From the very opening scene to the very last, it's always engaging. With the violin pieces to the sweeping nature of it all, it brings you into this world of Downton Abbey, and you just truly enough cannot look away. And the music just absolutely brings to life every little scene and sequence and dialogue, and it's truly just great. It's probably one of the most iconic scores when it comes down to any franchise properties that happen to come from TV. Right up there with Game of Thrones, I would personally say. And as well as adding in here, like I mentioned, I like this one more than the first movie. The first movie very much felt like something coming straight off the show, and as this one, even though this does feel like the giant grand conclusion to everything, everyone kind of gets their story wrapped up, besides like one little subplot that I'm definitely going to be talking about. But with that said, I really much felt that concluded nature, and even though I didn't know everyone's backstories, I actually found myself getting quite emotional with certain storytellings in here, that when it came down to the finale, I actually was emotionally wrapped up that this was ending, and it made me excited to go back and actually revisit the entire show for the first time. Because there are conclusions in here that do get introduced in here and finally wrapped up by the end, because there's so many grand characters in here, whether they're new or old. And for me, it's just fun to see the sequences that they go through. And I'm sure, again, the show has the same thing. The first movie definitely had this. And this movie has a wide variety of subplots, just like a lot of TV to movies do. And for me, most of them work, particularly the two big ones in here, which is half the family going off to Paris to find out about this villa and what the mystery of it and why it was left to Violet Graham. It's always really interesting to see how that works, as well as actually seeing the movie being filmed in their home. That was one of the more interesting aspects for me in the entire film, not just because I'm into movies, but also seeing the behind-the-scenes nature of that all. And I got a very big kick out of that, especially certain characters that are introduced in there and what it does for the main central characters throughout this story. Again, it just felt delightful. I was enjoying myself the entire way through and enjoying each and every one of these sequences, particularly, again, all the behind the scenes stuff and seeing how all that works, because very much this movie that's being made starts off as a silent film, but then eventually starts moving over to the talkies, which was in the same time period. And again, I'm always fascinated with that old-time Hollywood. That's where you have to give credit to every single cast member that is in here. They bring this film to life and fill it with that joy. And a lot of that, my favorites in particular, is Michelle Dockery'S Lady Mary, as well as Maggie Smith, who's absolutely great as Violet and always has some of the best lines. I absolutely love Jim Carter as Mr. Carson, and Elizabeth McGovern as Cora Graham is just so great. Again, the entire cast here is so damn wonderful, and they really much fill the air with joy. It's the feeling that you feel throughout this movie, and even with those pros, it's not a perfect movie. And maybe for fans of the show, these issues that I'm about to mention will not affect you at all, and I'll totally understand it. They didn't affect my grandmother at all, because one of the things that I do feel about this is while it's great to see them actually on the big screen, I'm sure, I felt like there were too many subplots in here. And, you know, if this was a 10-episode miniseries kind of wrapping up everything going on, I feel like maybe a lot of these subplots wouldn't have felt as rushed. Again, my grandmother, who was a big fan of Downton Abbey, did not really care about that. But for me, it did bother me because there's certain ending conclusions that I wish they would have touched on just a bit more. And in general, I was kind of surprised by one character actually not appearing in the entire film. Now, I don't know the context of this character from other than what they have described in this movie and the first one, but this particular character, whether it was casting, scheduling, any sort of thing like that, I was shocked to not see them show up in here. And if this is truly the finale of Downton Abbey, it feels kind of like a miss to maybe not move past that storyline and give us something different for a particular character. Again, I don't want to dive into spoilers, but that is one of those things that did bother me. As well as going back to kind of some of the subplots, having so many go on at once, and while I understand you're trying to give every character something to do, I don't feel like you needed to do that, because there's some characters in here that still get nothing to do, where I feel like in the first movie they actually had something to do. And for me, sometimes you just gotta take those risks, in my opinion. Like, if this character doesn't get as much storyline, then that's personally fine for me, because it just felt a little bit rushed in execution for certain set pieces and certain sequences that they're trying to do, and even important conversations that I feel like we're missing and that I would have actually appreciated were in those moments. When you have subplots like that and they do feel like they're a little bit jumbled and going all around all the place, the film can feel a bit long, and that's where it does drag in its pacing to the point where it's a 2-hour movie in 5 minutes, which for Downton Abbey movies fans, I'm sure all of you guys are excited for that. For me, probably could have been held back by 10 minutes unless they wanted to give development to a couple more of these plots, and that probably would have made it even better. Downton Abbey: A New Era is a joyful, delightful, and whimsical time back at this. Just how I enjoyed the first Downton Abbey, I very much more even enjoyed this one even more. And again, this is the movie that actually made me go, okay, now I really actually want to watch the show. The first movie had me intrigued. This one had me hooked. And now I'm excited to kind of finally go back and dive in and revisit the entire show for what it is. I love the performances in here. I think the score is absolutely great. And I actually think as a TV, like a TV show going to a movie, this is probably as best as it can get. I wish there weren't so many subplots, and if you wanted to do that, then maybe add a little bit more depth to those scenes, because then the pacing gets halted. It makes the film feel a little bit longer. And then in the general, I feel like not every character gets that emotional conclusion that you truly wanted, especially one particular subplot that I was like, really? That went nowhere. Absolutely, this movie is delightful, and a lot of fans are going to absolutely eat this one up. So with all that said, I'm going to give this film a B-. Once again, guys, for watching this, you guys are really all the best. And thank you to my grandma for introducing me to the show. Tons of awesome movie reviews going all around here, and tons of other movie content, so make sure to stay up to date on that. Hit that like and subscribe button. If you're interested in seeing movies early, make sure to also head on over to Sandwich on Films on how to see those. And of course, until next time, stay classy.